Good evening, everybody. How are you? My name is Eileen. I'm with the Hizon Foundation, and I'm so delighted that you guys are here with us tonight. And just wanted to let you know our mission for the foundation is designed with care, and our dedication to promote and create opportunities to improve lives. Our gratitude soiree is one of our cherished initiatives that we started, as Eric had mentioned, back in December. So this is our 10th gratitude soiree. It's our monthly gathering where we invite visionaries and conscious leaders to share their inspiring stories, as well as enlightening us, and talk about the power of gratitude. Tonight it is a very special evening where we have with us Gregg Tepper, and we will be immersing ourselves in the world of gardening and gratitude. So please allow me to introduce Eric Rodriguez, our co-host, who will lead us and talk about what we will be talking about and introducing our guest speaker. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and welcome.
Thanks, Eileen. Yeah, it's our 10th one. It really flew by. And we have such joy doing these gratitude soirees together. And it's like all over the world, all over the country, we get to join in and celebrate gratitude with amazing people. So without further ado, I want to introduce tonight's speaker, Gregg Tepper, who is my mentor and friend and a lot of many other things. He's just a wonderful, wonderful person. And I'm very, very excited to hear his talk. I might be wrong, but I think this is a totally original presentation. Is that correct, Gregg? Is this the first time doing gratitude?
Yes, this is the first time you'll see this. I was able to utilize slides and some stories from other presentations that I do on horticulture. I am a horticulturist and a gardener. First and foremost, I love plants and I love the wildlife that interact with them and the people that enjoy them.
Yay. Well, that's very exciting because, I've seen a lot of Gregg's presentations on nature sanctuary, on ferns. He has an amazing hour-long presentation on everything you need to know about the wonderful life of ferns, including that at very small scales, microscopic even, they have these amazing mechanisms. He has written books on deer-resistant plants of the Northeast, with his co-author Ruth, who is just incredible person. And I'm sure she'll make her way into this presentation because I know that you two are very grateful to have found each other. And you've had just a really amazing journey in horticulture for your whole life. I mean, growing up in your backyard, I read when I was kind of looking at some of your background stuff that you cultivated irises. Is that correct? When you were just a young teenager in the backyard.
I did. And a shout out goes to my mom about that, because when I was 13, I was very interested in the American Iris Society, and I was 13 and she took me to my first meeting and dropped me off. And the people there were so embracing and wonderful. But it was my mom who gave me a budget. And she said, I'm going to give you $50. And that was in 1982 to purchase iris for a garden. And she said, you could buy the brand new ones that cost $25 each, or you could budget and buy less expensive ones and have more irises. So I learned a very valuable lesson from my mom about things like that. And she was very encouraging to me.
Well, that's thank you for sharing that with us. And that's I've gotten the pleasure to meet her, and she's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman, and has raised a wonderful son as well. So to keep going, Gregg is, I haven't mentioned this yet, but he served as director of horticulture for not only Mount Cuba Center, which is one of just a beautiful arboretum and garden and amazing place, but also at the Delaware Botanical Garden. And he's head of horticulture now at Laurel Hill Cemeteries and Arboretums, where we met in Philadelphia, where he has just done amazing things. I'm going to let him speak about them. I could speak about it all day, but two highlights are Nature Sanctuary, which is our green burial garden, which Gregg has pioneered and made into, I think, the most beautiful natural burial site in the world, or at least up there with the top and the best of them, which is a real testament to your work. And then also at Laurel Hill East with the shrubbery, and bringing that back to it was founded in the mid 1800s, and so bringing it back to its glory there. But without further ado, I want to bring Gregg to the stage so he can have time to do his presentation and talk to us about gratitude. Let's extend a really warm welcome to Gregg Tepper, an amazing guy. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I am going to share my screen, and we are going to get started. And here we go. Right. Let me start here. Super. Okay. So Eric, if anyone has any questions, if you could host that for me, administer that, that would be great. I would love to answer questions if people are muted. If not, I would be very happy to answer questions about tonight's presentation. So it's called Gardening and Gratitude. And so my purpose tonight is to delve into native plants, delve into how they interact with wildlife, and also tell some distinct, unique stories, and also bring some smiles to your faces about some things that you may already know or may not know. And then I will be wrapping up at the end to tell you about the significance of a certain plant and a story about me and my late father, who passed from cancer in 2005. So I'd like to dedicate this evening's presentation to my dad. All right, let's get started. So from a very young age, I loved the woods. That was my playground. That's where I went. I grew up in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in southeast Pennsylvania. And I was fortunate enough to have 5 acres that my parents owned, and to have 2 creeks and woods in which to play. And this gave me an immense appreciation for and a resulting gratitude for our natural world and all the incredible things within it. And plants just really, really were my thing. So I would spend many summers in the woods, and I played there, I pretended there, I learned there, I experienced there, I cried there, I laughed there. This was my reverie. This was the place that I went to when I wasn't fitting in elsewhere in my life. And it has always been astounding to me. I don't know why. It's a repeated process, but it just comes back once and again each time, that when I nurture a garden, it nurtures me. And so I highly recommend to anyone that hasn't gardened or hasn't had a house plant or something like that, give it a try. I think you'll be delighted. And so in my time amongst the woods, this is where I would pretend as a child. This is where I learned the beauty and the mysteries and the incredible facts about our natural world. And it made me realize very early on, I need to do something with this. I need to help preserve it, so help further it, and to teach other people about its beauty. And so places like this in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, this is called Shanks Ferry. It's a wildflower preserve, and wildflowers were my thing. Native plants of the eastern United States. That has broadened, of course, to all plants, but the woods are where I grew up, and those are the plants that give me a sense of place and give me a foundation and fill me with joy and gratitude. So I love this quote. I think it's so relevant. Use your 5 senses. Learn to see, learn to hear, learn to feel, learn to smell, and know that by practice alone, you can become expert. Do you see the repeating words here? Learn, learn, learn. Well, as a child, that's what I wanted to do. And I used them all. I saw, I heard, I smelled, I tasted. I did it all. And what an amazing opportunity this was. If you ever want to engage someone in the natural world, or even engage a child, have them touch something, smell something, certainly see something, and teach them a story, tell them a story to teach. It's important to do. And I have a similar lecture like this that's called The Sensory Appeal of Native Plants. And someday I will be completing a book by the same title. And this is a very important thing for tonight's theme about gratitude, because it's through our senses that we experience all the things that we do. And for those of us that are not fortunate or are set up to not have a specific sense, we realize that those other senses are more acute. And I will discuss that tonight. So this was a quote of Dr. William Osler, 1849 to 1919. So did you realize that in a day, 80% of what we see, or I should say perceive, is through sight? That's pretty incredible. So when you wake up in the morning, yeah, you might smell the coffee, you open your eyes and then the light comes in, and yep, you do a little stretching and so forth, and you start your day. And it's amazing what we perceive in a day from sight. And color. Oh my goodness, incredible. Look at this. This is a plant of the Midwest and Eastern United States called cardinal flower. Called cardinal flower because it's red, just like the cardinal. Not only also our native bird was named the cardinal because of the cardinal in Rome. And so what's so interesting about this flower is we don't have a great deal of red flowers. It's pretty amazing. The reason this is red is because it's pollinated by the ruby-throated hummingbird, who adores red. And when you see a hummingbird come to a stand of this plant in your garden, if it doesn't make you joyous, I can't imagine what would. It's amazing. And of course, combined colors like Spigelia marilandica, known as Indian pink. And you might say, Indian pink, it's red. Well, interestingly, our indigenous people of the United States, North America, the indigenous peoples of North America had realized that the root could be used as a dye for fabric, and it would render a pink color. And if we look down on it, it looks like a starry sky with red and the shooting stars. Incredible. I just adore this plant. And it's something that just makes you marvel every time you look at it. And no matter what garden I've placed this plant in, I hear the same reaction from everyone. Wow, this is amazing. And orange. Oh, what a color that is. And just a dramatic color. I know when I was young, I wore brown, blue, black. I wore very drab colors. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten more and more adventuresome. And now orange is one of those colors that I just really enjoy not only wearing, but enjoy having in the garden. And this is Asclepias tuberosa, known as the butterfly flower, or also known as butterfly weed. And what's so unique about this plant is that it attracts butterflies, of course. And when they come to the flower, and most of the milkweeds, the adult monarch butterflies use this as a very necessary source of nectar. But what makes this plant extra special in regards to the monarch butterfly is the fact that its larvae, its eggs, must be laid on an Asclepias, on a milkweed, and its larvae eat only this plant. It cannot survive on any other plant. The monarch butterfly lays its eggs on these milkweeds, and the milkweeds nurture the young and then feed the adults. So these plants are super vital. So I encourage you to plant milkweeds, and the monarchs will be grateful. Oh, look at this. Lilium superbum, the Turk's cap lily. This is another wonderful, wonderful native plant. And notice all the spots. I wonder what those could be. And take a look at the Lilium canadense, the Canada lily. Look at the color and look at the spots. Any idea what those spots could be for? Well, I'll answer the question for you. Those are nectary signals. These are the indicators to its pollinator, the butterflies, of which there are many different ones that utilize lilies. This is a signal to them that what they need to do is land on that inner part of the lily, and their wings brush up against the anthers that you're seeing there, which are the brown, fuzzy, almost looks like a really unique type of cinnamon coated butter, I think, stick of butter. But what's so interesting about this is that pollen is very sticky. It sticks to the butterfly's wings. They collect it, the nectar, by putting their proboscis or tongue up into the flower to gather nectar from the nectaries. And it moves on to another flower, another lily. And that pollen that's stuck on its wings rubs up against the pistil. That's the part of the flower in the very middle, right above the word canadense. And that's the part that receives the pollen, and pollination is complete. The butterfly is going after the nectar and the flower is being fastened. So I have to include yellow here because goldenrod, which is all over the country, all over North America, many different species. This beautiful flower has a bum rap. You know why? Because people say, oh, it's blooming, it's giving me hay fever. But I'm going to dispel the myth. What gives us hay fever is not goldenrod. It's this plant. This is ambrosia or ragweed. And you might say, well, what's the difference? I don't get it. The difference is ragweed is pollinated by, it's air pollinated or wind pollinated. So its pollen is airborne and it gets in our nostrils and it gives us hay fever. Whereas solidago, goldenrod, has sticky pollen and it clumps and sticks together, and bees distribute its pollen, not the air. It just happens to bloom at the same time as ragweed. Aren't you grateful that goldenrod is not the bad guy here? That's for sure. But the pollinators that visit goldenrod are many, including our native bumblebees. These are the ever important pollinators for our native plants, and they are such an important part of our ecology in North America. And if we look at colors, there's even a green flower, Veratrum viride, the false hello. So Eric, I just wanted to pause and find out if there were any questions.
No questions so far, but please, everybody, you can share your questions in the chat. I just wanted to know, I think I know that a lot of these questions or a lot of these pictures you've taken from the gardens, are they all taken by you, or
almost all of them are? Yeah, some of the ones are ones that that I've been able to get licensing to, but almost all the flower pictures are my own that I've taken over the years. Like the picture with the woman blowing her nose, that one I got online, but these are all my own photographs. Thanks for asking.
They're beautiful. We've gotten some comments in the chat that people are loving the photos. And one question just came up asking, are there flowers that bring good luck?
Oh, I'm going to say yes. There are many flowers that bring good luck because it's all in how we define luck. When we look at the garden and we perceive the garden and it brings us joy and happiness, and to see the wildlife interacting with it, the birds, the butterflies, the pollinators, I think that is luck. And so it's a very relative way to look at that. Any plants that I know of that are symbolic necessarily for luck, I can't say I do know, but I'm going to define it that way. I think having any of our native plants would certainly bring joy and good luck as well. So this is Veratrum. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say on top of that, any plant that brings the hummingbird to it is a good luck plant, I think.
Yes, indeed. Agreed. Agreed. So this is Veratrum viride, the false hellebore. And its beautiful green flowers are so unique. And so much of what we have learned in our culture, we learned from the indigenous peoples of North America. These people highly respected their native plants. They utilized them, and they also knew they were an important resource. But what's interesting about this one is for the most part, this is poisonous to humans. However, in certain specific doses, it can be taken and was taken by indigenous peoples as a vermifuge. You might say, vermifuge, what could that be? Actually, indigenous peoples also suffered from intestinal worms. And so this was a plant that in the right dose could be utilized to rid the people of the worms, the intestinal worms. Pretty fast. Oh my goodness, look at this. Gentianopsis crinata, the fringed gentian. So this is a plant that is just absolutely stunning to see. It's quite rare because it's a biennial. And a biennial means that the first year that it germinates from seed, it produces simply leaf growth and no flowers. The second year, however, it produces gorgeous flowers like these, and then they are pollinated and go to seed. And so if the flower is ever found and picked, it doesn't have the opportunity to go to seed. So it's quite rare in North America now, and certainly of concern. But as long as we learn to pay attention to and respect our native plants and keeping them in the wild and also respecting their habitats, beautiful plants like this can continue to exist. Oh, so Eric, you remember this one, Salvia azurea. This was photographed in Nature Sanctuary that Eric was mentioning. This is a beautiful plant that exists in the native plant meadow that we have at the cemetery that is a garden and also a place of green burial. So it's very symbolic to me. It's a late season plant, but that's a color that's rarely seen. And if you ever have the opportunity to visit Laurel Hill West in Bala Cynwyd, Pennsylvania, Montgomery County, and come to see the garden there, you will see the beauty and the immense amount of different textures and colors throughout the seasons. I highly recommend you visit. And this is just one of those ones that has a color that knocks your socks off. But not only that, but look at the Virginia bluebells. So when the flowers are mature, they are blue. When they're in bud, they're pink. What a cool, interesting way to exist for sure. And not only are they blue, but they also come in a pure pink version. And dare I call it champagne? Beautiful, beautiful. Such a pale blue that it's almost a white. And then there is a pure white version as well. And the lion's turtle head, pink, pink, pink. You just can't get anything better. In fact, I love the cultivated variety name for this is Hot Lips. You gotta love it. And talk about pink. Sometimes combinations of pigments in the plant viewed from afar can have a much different effect. So when you look up close to this tree known as Cercis canadensis, redbud, this, as you look at it from a distance, it looks very almost like a hot pink. But as you get up closer, you realize what you're seeing is that the stems of the flowers and the little coverings of the actual petals themselves, the sepals, are red and the flower petals are pink. So from a distance, they show as hot pink, a bright saturated color. Gorgeous. And this tree is in the bean family, just like green beans and peas and the flowers are edible. Oh, Passiflora incarnata, the passion flower. I don't think that Mother Nature could have designed a more bizarre looking flower. And it has the most interesting scent. And what a way for a bumblebee to come down and visit that swirling petals that are almost like fibers, and then to pick up the pollen and to distribute it from flower to flower. It just looks like something, as a friend of mine said, right out of a science fiction novel. I love it. Purple, purple, purple. Gotta love it. And let's take all colors and combine them. And what happens? We have white. And this is a stunning form of bloodroot. It's a double flowered form. It has more petals than it has anything. It's incredible. And to see it on a bright early spring day, it will literally knock your socks off. Once again, something thoroughly worth being grateful for. Often you may have heard that term. It's not just how we look at things, it's also what we're looking at, and vice versa. It's not just what we look at, it's how we look at it. And perception and perspective is important. This is a plant of the eastern United States called bluets. It's only 2 inches tall. But yours truly got down on his stomach and laid flat on this moss mat and took a picture from the side. And I like to think this is the way the ants see it. And light. Light is so important too. The way that we see things maybe in the early part of the day when the sun isn't coming through. And then of course, to be able to see the Trillium erectum, the red trillium, this way, it's nice, but look at it with the sun from behind. Oh, all of a sudden it's a marvel. It glows. It's beautiful. And I just can't help loving our native plants. And back to the bloodroot. So this is the way we typically see it. We look down as it's coming up in the early spring. It's sunny. The leaves aren't on the trees yet. And as we look down, this is what we see. But I'd like you to, for a moment, imagine that you're a tiny little toad and you've come underneath this bloodroot. How would you see it? This is what you would see. Gorgeous. And Rhododendron vasei, the pink shell azalea. This is native to North Carolina. And one day I was out photographing in a native plant garden and having a good time, taking lots of photographs, of which this is one. And then it was time for lunch. Well, while I was eating lunch, it rained. We got a very quick, brief April shower. And when I came back to photograph flowers about half an hour later, this is what I found. Look at the water. And we think of water. It's a resource. It's so important, so amazing, but it's also absolutely beautiful, especially when it coats a flower right after a fresh spring rain. So if we think again, how we see many of these beautiful flowers. As you look down, the dimpled trout lily, this is what we see. And I think, gosh, we're seeing the backs of the flowers. So wouldn't it be nice to once again be a toad and see it like this? Pretty special. So I think we're all aware that plants move, right? So for example, those of you that have a house plant that sits on a windowsill, have you noticed that if it flowers or it has its leaves and so forth, they tend to turn and follow the sun? That's called phototropic. It looks for the sun and it leans that way. Well, I wanted to demonstrate that these wonderful trout lilies do the same thing. And the only way I could show people was to use time-lapse photography. And this is what you see. Watch as over a 5-day period, the flowers just getting ready to open with the sun. And is it gonna open? Is it gonna open? Oh, maybe not. Okay, well, we'll just go to sleep. And the next day, here's your chance, trout lily. Open up, open up. Oh, and that's what the pollinators love. So this plant is also phototropic. It opens with the sun and closes at night. Once again, opening up. But look what's happening. It's growing. It's growing outside the frame of my camera. It shows how our plants, although we don't realize it at first, are always moving, always changing, always growing. Isn't that fascinating? Another wonderful thing for which to be grateful. And you gotta love kids. Children in the garden, they're just they're just the best. It's so much fun to work with them because, of course, inquiring minds want to know. They're always curious. So years ago, when I worked as a gardener in this one native plant garden at Mount Cuba Center, I had the opportunity to, on certain days, to ask kids what they thought of certain things. And it was great to hear. So, of course, when children go around the garden and they're curious, what I like to ask them is, what do you see? I see something as an adult male, but what does this girl see when she looks? And so I had to ask some of the kids. So there were these three sisters one time, and they were there, and I asked them, well, what do you see when you look at this flower? And the one sister said, let's see. I see a purple starfish. The other sister says, I see a purple fairy princess. Oh, wonderful. And the third sister surprised me. She said, I see a purple skydiver. I said, a purple skydiver? Yeah, a purple skydiver. You gotta love it. So, of course, another day, there was two boys. They were also brothers. And I said, when you see these anthers, and I pointed to these anthers that looked kind of crusty and so forth, what do you see? Well, the older brother, he gave me an answer that I can't even really quite tell you guys. But it was interesting. It looked like something, little boys, they like bodily functions and stuff like that. So it was a very interesting answer. And I asked his younger brother, well, what do you see? And he said, I see a deep fried Twinkie. I said, a deep fried Twinkie? I didn't know there was such thing. He said, yes, a deep fried Twinkie. Wow. It's so wonderful to get a perception from children. And I also admire the way that people in the past learned about our native plants. We did not have photography. What we had was engravings. And these engravings in the mid-19th century and earlier were hand colored. Well, this is a photocopy, or I should say a photograph of plants that I have in my collection of antique botanical engravings. And look at how close these renderings are to the real thing, such as the Virginia Spring Beauty. I mean, that's really impressive. And so is the small bulblet that it produces with the roots included. I think that's pretty impressive. And oftentimes these artists that created these were in Europe or in England, and they never actually saw the plant. They had to do a rendering based upon a description. Impressive. The Carolina lily. Look at that. Just lovely. So, of course, as we're drawing now into the fall, the color in the garden and in our native woods brings about amazing colors. Things like the fothergilla, which is green for the rest of the year. And then in the fall, it's like magic. It turns into these incredible colors that change day by day. And every time you go out to the garden, there's something new to look at. Now, the maple leaf viburnum, you might say, it's so-so, but wait to the fall. Not only do these green leaves turn, but so do those little green berries that you see. And the berries turn into these dark black, purple blackberries, and the leaves turn into these incredible mauve and pink and purpley colored combinations that is never repeated. Every year different. And those berries are ripening up. They're high in fat, and those will sustain many of our birds as they migrate south for the winter. Gorgeous. And of course, things like the Nyssa sylvatica, the black gum, which just lights up the woods in the fall with its beautiful red foliage. just incredible. Can you imagine what fall is like? The color, the last hurrah before the long winter sets forth. And this is a time, once again, it's a great time for children as well, but also for the adults who have children inside us. And what better thing could you want to do than rake up a whole lot of leaves and jump in the pile? I have to admit, I did this once in my 20s. It was a lot of fun, I have to say. And of course, to spend time with your mom and to carve the pumpkin, or maybe your dad or an uncle or an older sibling. These are the special things that the bounty of the garden brings us. And it's also a part of this season. It's togetherness. And it's something how gardens, and whether it's fruit from the gardens or flowers from the gardens, it brings people together. And it's something that's shared by all people, all ethnicities, all cultures, the love of the garden. I want to talk now about how important our senses are. Years ago, when I worked at Mount Cuba Center in Hockessin, Delaware, there was a woman who came with her daughter to visit the garden. Her daughter was blind, and she asked me if I could assist her to show the garden to her daughter. And I absolutely delighted in this opportunity, because this young girl was going to experience the garden with her sense of touch. Things like moss on a rock took on very special meaning because it was soft. And she described what each thing meant to her. She said, "This feels like my teddy bear's belly." And then these croziers, emerging ferns, they were soft. And she described to me how her grandmother would sew and knit. And she said, "These feel like my grandmother's skeins of wool." And then this plant, as she rubbed it between her fingers and it felt its leathery feeling, she said, "This is like my daddy's jacket." And then this, this was so much fun. This is a plant called Impatiens capensis, known as touch-me-not. And the only reason it's called that, also called jewelweed, is because it has these seeds that have a very unique way of distributing. It has seed pods that have a very unique way of distributing the seed. When you touch them, and as we did and put them in her hand, they popped open and she could feel it and she could smell it. She could not see it, but she experienced it. So it was something, as that young woman, girl, and her mother walked away, and her mother nodded to me and said, "Thank you." And I learned how the young girl was able to, also express to me her gratitude. And she took her hand and put it on my face and patted it and said, "Thank you." It was really special. And the last thing that we did, which was so much fun, was this plant. And you might say, "Gosh, what do you do with that?" Well, I'll show you. So this is called obedient plant, and I'll tell you why. So if you look at the flowers, the way they're oriented on the stalk, and you bring your fingers and you turn them, this is what happens. They stay where you put them when you move them side by side. Obedient plant. Isn't that fascinating? It's really something. So as we think about our many senses and what we have and are grateful for, sometimes is it sight? Is it taste? Is it touch? And just how important our sense of hearing is. And here in this beautiful woodland, as you walk through in the spring in the eastern United States, this is often what you might hear. This is the black-capped chickadee. And as you walk out into an open area, by the wood's edge, this bird will serenade you. Rarely do we see it, but we almost always hear it. And this, of course, is the indigo bunny. Beautiful. So when I worked at Mount Cuba Center on the Woods Path, the area I cared for, in the summertime, it was a delight. Even though there were mosquitoes, even though there was heat and humidity, I was serenaded daily by this bird. and that is the wood thrush. And I'd like to end this evening with this story. This is a story of horticulture. This is a story of me, and this is a story of my father. So it's an apology and an expression of gratitude. And when I was 13, it was my responsibility to mow the lawn beginning in the spring. And where we lived in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, we had a typical lawn that was full of common blue violets. So many so that they were coming up all throughout the lawn. And I just could not bring myself to mowing them all down. So what I did was I very strategically, with the push mower, mowed all around them and kept the most beautiful masses of violets intact and mowed the lawn in between. And I was so proud of what I had done because I had mowed the grass as my father asked, and yet I preserved the violets. However, when my father came home from work, he was livid. He was so angry with me, and all he could do was get on the big tractor and go out and mow everything down. And I, of course, was feeling dejected for two reasons. I had tried to do a good thing by not mowing the violets down, and my dad mowed them down. And I also disappointed my father, whom I loved very much and I respected. Well, years and years later, my dad and I were working together. And he was 58 years old and I was in my 30s. And my father had found out he had bone cancer and he was going to need to go for treatment. Well, one evening we're working in the garage on a project and my dad pauses and says to me, "Gregg, I owe you an apology." I said, "You do? What happened? What would you do?" And he said, "No, Gregg, I do. I owe you an apology. Do you remember when you were 13 and I came home and I got angry because you didn't mow the lawn?" "Yeah, Dad, I do remember that. I do. That was really difficult." And he said, "Yes. Well, I want to apologize because what I didn't realize was I was so focused on getting a job done and not realizing what you had done. You had tried to save the violets, and you loved horticulture. And you love flowers, and you were doing what you thought was the right thing. And I disrupted it big time. I apologize." And I said, "Thank you, Dad. I really appreciate that." And my father said, "And I'm really grateful that you did what you did." How special that was. It resounds in me to this day. And violets to me represent an expression of gratitude. Acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. And gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. And if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being with you all tonight. And I just wanted to let you know that this was a very special presentation that I was able to do. And I'm very grateful for being able to do it. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Gregg. And I want to make sure that I open it up to everybody here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. And we have some in the chat too. Some beautiful. Amy says that her husband always leaves huge patches of violets when he mows in the spring.
That's great. That's great. That's super. Yep. Yeah.
And Tammy said that she's been thinking that in addition to being gorgeous, experiencing the miracle of flowers and plant life increases our sense of awe, and awe has been shown to increase our sense of connectedness and happiness.
Indeed, indeed. Yep. When you nurture a garden, it nurtures you back. That's for sure.
And I'm typing in the chat any questions. So if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask Gregg about flowers or gratitude or anything at all, now is your time. And if not, that is okay because I have some questions too.
Super.
So, right.
It was so nice to share this with you, and I encourage you to certainly look to the next month for the next gratitude soiree, and thank you also to Eileen for all that you do and your foundation does to further goodness in the world.
Thank you so much. And Eileen, I think you're muted. There you are.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. And, it was such a beautiful story too about your father and how it just pivoted and it was so meaningful because sometimes, it comes around and what a wonderful way to share that with us. And I love that you reminded us to really look into being in the moment, using the senses and noticing even small things. And I love the point where you took a picture of the plant that just moved and how it just played, and it was so beautiful because sometimes with all the busyness that we have, we tend to overlook things that are so meaningful and so beautiful. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Eric, for inviting your mentor to our gratitude circle. And to all of you, I want to before we conclude, I do want to make a very important announcement. Next month on Thursday, October 19th, we have an extraordinary opportunity to come together again and make a difference in the lives of the single mothers. Our goal is to help and provide financial assistance and mentorship to 50 single mothers who are pursuing their higher education. This program is about empowering these incredible women to achieve their dreams and create better lives for themselves and their family. And I invite each and every one of you to be part of this initiative next month. Your support will directly impact these single mothers and it'll just create a much brighter future for them and their children. So please mark your calendars and spread the word and join us. And again, I wanted to just thank you for being here, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next month, October 19th.
Beautiful. And I just want to throw in there too, Eileen, that if anybody here, also there's an amazing mentorship program that happens through Hizon, where I know some people on the call now are mentors to the scholarship recipients, and it's open to everybody. So if you are interested in volunteering as a mentor and getting paired up with one of the scholarship recipients from all over the world, then I believe it's 5 calls throughout the year for 30 minutes or so. Is that correct, Eileen?
Yes. And what was really beautiful about it is that the way it's working out really well is that you get to mentor somebody that is pursuing a similar industry that you're familiar with. And it's not just career, but it's also developing and bonding with them and checking up on their progress. And one of our mentors actually here too. And we will also be spotlighting mentors as well as the scholarship recipients on our next meeting. So it's going to be a very exciting event.
Yay, very.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, I do have a question for you, Gregg. If somebody would like to reach out to you, is there a way that they can contact you via an email? And will we be able to share?
Yes, absolutely. I'll put my email address in the chat, and that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. You bet. Yeah. Here we go. All right.
Great. Perfect. I love all the photos that you've shared with us. Amazing presentation. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a lifelong endeavor of mine to photograph a lot of the gardens I've created and the plants. And I love doing outreach lectures about the everything horticulture. There's many different genres and so forth within that industry, and it's always a pleasure to be able to do a lecture in photographs. What's the old saying? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Well,
okay.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. And we will send out our thank you email after this. And we can't wait to see you again for next month's gratitude soiree. And if you want to respond to any of those emails that we sent with feedback on how you enjoyed tonight's gratitude soiree, we'd love that as well.
Super.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody. Yes.
Night.